Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Podcast. I'm Lauren LaSalle, and I'm a licensed therapist, highly sensitive person, and HSP coach. This bi-weekly podcast is meant for highly sensitive people and their loved ones, as both experiences will be discussed. Thank you for joining me, and let's begin. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Podcast. I'm Lauren, and today's episode is about HSP Strengths. And this topic was requested by someone, so thank you for this great idea. I will start the episode by talking about my strengths, how I identified them and reframed negative feedback, and how I accepted them, and then I will share a few strengths that were shared with me on social media. So let's go back some time to my childhood. Most of the time, I felt like I was either too much, usually at home, or not enough, usually at school. A few years ago, I went through report cards and feedback from teachers that ranged from kindergarten through middle school, and they all said pretty much the same thing, which was, Lauren is creative, but very quiet. And all throughout school, I knew that my teachers wanted me to speak more in class, or speak at all in class, but that was something that gave me a lot of anxiety, and I was much better at actively listening and observing what was going on rather than formulating things to say. And unfortunately, this is not generally viewed as a positive thing or a strength with most people. I've always been very academic, very creative, very kind, but very quiet, and the quiet part seemed to overshadow the rest, especially when it came to school. At home was where I felt the most comfortable, so that's where my emotions really came out. I was very emotional, very stubborn, and my parents did not know how to deal with it. I was always complaining about something, usually about how much a physical injury, however small, was bothering me, and was always too much, or I always felt like I was too much, the opposite of who I was in public. I just felt like I could never win. I was never what people wanted me to be. So, a side note, my parents did the best they could, not knowing about high sensitivity, and it turns out they're both HSPs as well. So it was kind of the perfect storm without having any knowledge of the trait to better understand why we all responded to things the way that we did. I also had several close friends growing up who totally accepted me for who I was, and we are still friends to this day. And I don't know if they listen to this podcast, but if they are listening, I'm sure they know who they are, and thank goodness for them. I really struggled with feeling like too much and not enough throughout my life without really knowing that's what I was feeling, until I learned about sensory processing sensitivity, or the trait of high sensitivity. And this helped me learn that my reactions to things weren't weird, they were just different than those of most people. And there were other people who felt and reacted similarly to me. So between discovering this and having to do a lot of self-reflection in grad school while getting my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, I was able to reframe what had always been seen by others as negatives into positives. I realized that I am creative, empathetic, caring, a great listener rather than quiet, and I know my values and what I want rather than being stubborn. Being a therapist helped me realize that one of my greatest strengths is being able to really listen to people and hold space for them, which can make a huge difference in someone's life and really promote positive change. Sometimes it can be difficult to remember my strengths, especially if I'm not having a great day or if I'm feeling upset or frustrated about a particular situation, but that's just how it goes sometimes. We're all constantly works in progress. So here are some strengths that were shared with me by HSPs on social media. So someone on Instagram shared that their strengths are appreciating the details and nuances of life and writing. Sophie shared that her strength is knowing exactly what's going on for someone else without them even knowing it themselves. And Julia shared that her strength is being empathic to other situations. So thank you three so much for sharing your strengths. It's so important for HSPs to be able to identify their strengths, and sometimes this means reframing what you've been told or what you've thought about yourself in the past. If you feel like you could use some one-to-one support with this, send me an email to set up a 15-minute complimentary connection meeting, and you can use this time to either learn more about my coaching program or have a mini coaching session. If you have any ideas for episode topics, if you have any questions for me to answer on the podcast, or if you would like to write an email sharing your story for me to read on the podcast, you can email me at lauren@laurenlasallecoaching.com. You can find out more about my coaching program, as well as resources and links to my social media by visiting my website at laurenlasallecoaching.com. And there is also a link on my website to join my email list, and by doing so, you will receive a free resource from me called 5 Self-Care Tips for Highly Sensitive People. Before I sign off, I will leave you with a quote. Don't be afraid of not being perfect. It might be what makes you amazing. Jolene Stockman.